Among the Ainur, the divine spirits who existed even before time, Melkor was exceptional. His power was second only to Eru Ilúvatar, the creator of all things. Melkor was not just another spirit. He was forged with a piece of Eru's own wisdom and might, and with it came knowledge and ambition unmatched by any of his kin. From the beginning, Melkor wanted more. The Ainur had one purpose: to bring Eru's vision to life through music, each adding their voice to a song that would shape all of creation. Yet, while the others sang harmoniously, Melkor's desires strayed. His ambition was insatiable, and it led him to rebel. Driven by a yearning for ultimate power, Melkor sought the flame imperishable, the essence of creation itself. He believed it might be a hidden treasure, one he could seize to gain dominion over all creation. But his search ended in a painful revelation. The flame imperishable was inseparable from Eru, the ultimate source of life. It was not something he could possess. Refusing to accept this limitation, Melkor's ambition darkened, planting seeds of corruption within him. This desire would become his curse, igniting his transformation from creation to destruction. As it said, he was called Melkor, and he had great power and knowledge, but he was not satisfied, for he desired the things he could not have. In the void, Melkor's anger simmered. As the Ainur gathered to sing the first great music, the Ainulindala, Melkors Rebellion erupted. While the others played their parts, weaving harmonious beauty, Melkor's notes twisted the music into a dissonant, discordant theme. His defiant tune clashed with the other melodies, sowing chaos and drawing some Ainur to falter. But Eru responded with calm resolve, integrating Melkor's chaos into the symphony. This was Eru's subtle way of showing that even Melkor's defiance could be woven into his grand design. Melkor, however, grew resentful, feeling his efforts to seize control were thwarted. He came to see his place not as a contributor to creation, but as a potential ruler over it. When Eru's vision manifested as a world that would house Eru's children, the Ainur were filled with wonder and purpose. But Melkor's heart saw only a prize, something to conquer. As the Ainur descended into the newly created realm of Arda, Middle-earth, Melkor's ambition transformed into an obsession with dominion. In his arrogance, Melkor saw himself above his kin. His heart darkened with pride. For he was the greatest of the Ainur, but he was also the most proud. Instead of joining in the harmony, he sought to impose his will upon the new world. To him, Arda was not a home to cultivate, it was a kingdom to claim. Upon arriving in Arda, Melkor's plans became increasingly dark. He turned to the lesser spirits, the Maiar, and drew them into his service. Among them were beings of immense power who would become twisted by Melkor's influence, including the Balrogs, creatures of flame and terror. And it was here that Melkor found his most infamous lieutenant, a cunning Maiar named Sauron. As the Valar, the most powerful of the Ainur, shaped Arda into a place of light and beauty, Melkor set himself against them. If they raised mountains, he brought them crashing down. If they brought light, he cloaked the world in shadow. The scars of their battle marked Middle-earth, symbols of Melkor's relentless desire for control. In the far north, he built his first stronghold, Utumno, a fortress shrouded in darkness. It became a haven for creatures of malice and a symbol of his growing power. Believing Melkor defeated, the Valar turned their attention to the western heart of the world, crafting a realm of beauty, untouched by darkness. They established Valinor, a sanctuary where they could dwell far from Melkor's corruption. But Melkor, now known as Morgoth, was patient. In the silence of his dark fortress, Utumno, he nurtured his hatred, feeding his armies in secrecy. Slowly, the world began to feel his presence creeping back. Disease, death, and shadows spreading across Middle-earth, signaling to the Valar that the enemy they thought conquered was only growing stronger. This quiet hostility set the stage for a new war, a war in which Morgoth would unleash horrors unlike anything Middle-earth had seen. His reign became a shadow across the ages, deepened by his ambition to claim dominion over all life. After destroying the two lamps and clashing with the Valar, Morgoth retreated to Utumno, his stronghold buried deep beneath the earth, where his malice only festered. In the solitude of his dark halls, he discovered a new presence in the world, the Elves, Eru Ilúvatar's firstborn. Their awakening ignited a seething rage within Morgoth, for these noble beings represented everything he despised: purity, beauty, and a light beyond his reach. Determined to claim these creatures for himself, Morgoth devised a plan of unimaginable cruelty. When he found the elves, he captured many and subjected them to torments so perverse that legends say it twisted their very forms and spirits. Thus, the first orcs were born, once elves, now darkened, mutilated, and stripped of their souls. They became loyal servants, forced to obey Morgoth's every command. With each twisted creation, his power darkened, spreading like a blight across Middle-earth. His hatred for the Elves and Men was unbridled, and he sought to corrupt and destroy them. For he had taken to himself the darkest and most fearful creatures of the world, and he bred them in his secret places. His hatred drove Morgoth to breed monstrous creatures in the shadows, amassing a vile army poised for destruction. His influence tainted the land, foretelling the cataclysm to come. The Valar soon discovered the existence of the Elves and saw the danger they faced if Morgoth continued his predation. Realizing the peril, the Valar prepared to challenge Morgoth's growing power, launching an assault on Utumno. This epic conflict, known as the Battle of the Powers or the War of the Gods, unleashed the Valar's full might, shattering Morgoth's fortress. After a long struggle, Morgoth was bound in chains by Tolkien, the mighty champion of the Valar. Dragged back to Valinor in chains, Morgoth was sentenced to imprisonment in the halls of Mandos. For 3 ages, nearly 2,900 years, he simmered with hatred, his spirit shackled, but his malice undiminished. Yet even bound, Morgoth's influence lingered. The seeds of corruption he had sown endured, and his followers, including the cunning Sauron, retreated to hidden corners of Middle-earth, biding their time. After nearly 3 millennia, Morgoth feigned repentance, pleading with Manwë, the chief of the Valar, for mercy. His words dripped with false humility, his voice smooth and persuasive. Though some among the Valar, especially Tulkas, harbored doubts, Manwë's mercy prevailed, and he allowed Morgoth to walk free under strict conditions. Morgoth was confined to Valinor, and his every move would be watched. But Morgoth's mind already churned with new schemes. Ever manipulative, he turned his attention to the Elves of Valinor, especially the Noldor, a group renowned for their skill in crafting and thirst for knowledge. Among them, he found a potential pawn, Fëanor, the greatest smith of the elves, who had recently created the Silmarils, 3 radiant jewels capturing the light of the 2 trees of Valinor. Morgoth became obsessed with these gems, seeing in them both power and a bitter mockery of his own failed ambitions. Morgoth approached Fëanor with whispered lies, stoking his pride and fueling his fears. He planted doubts in the Noldor prince's mind, suggesting that the Valar sought to control his creations and warning of the coming of men who would one day claim Middle-earth. Fëanor's growing mistrust of the Valar began to isolate him from his kin. However, as Fëanor's insight grew, he realized Morgoth's intentions and rejected him. Furious and desperate, Morgoth knew his time was running out. Before the Valar could uncover his schemes, Morgoth fled to Avathar, a shadowy land beyond the reach of the Valar, where he sought out an old ally, Ungoliant, the primordial spider spirit of insatiable hunger and darkness. Ungoliant had once served Morgoth, but turned away after his fall. Desperate, Morgoth promised her a feast of unimaginable treasure if she aided him one final time. Under the shroud of Ungoliant's darkness, Morgoth made his way back to Valinor undetected. Together, they reached the heart of Valinor, where Telperion and Laurelin, the two trees, radiated light across the land. In a single dark act, Morgoth struck the trees with a spear of hatred, and Ungoliant drank their life essence, devouring their light until nothing remained. A profound darkness fell upon Valinor, a night deeper and more malevolent than any before, a void that heralded Morgoth's return to power. In the darkening days of Valinor, Morgoth and his ally, the monstrous spider Ungoliant, unleashed a terrible plot. Under cover of night, they struck at Formenos, the home of Feanor's father, Finwë, who guarded the Silmarils, their radiance unmatched by any creation in Arda. Morgoth's lust for the Silmarils was all-consuming, a desire that pushed him to slay Finwë and seize the jewels. This act of treachery marked him forever, as Feanor, consumed with grief and rage, cursed him with the name Morgoth, the black foe of the world. Morgoth's triumph, however, would not go unchallenged. Feanor and his followers were incensed, their lives now devoted to reclaiming what had been taken. And yet, Morgoth's desire was not simply for jewels, it was to lay claim over all of Arda itself. As Morgoth and Ungoliant fled toward Middle-earth with the stolen Silmarils, the fragile alliance between them fractured. Ungoliant demanded her share of the prize, desiring the Silmarils' light for herself. Morgoth, his heart twisted with greed, refused, enraging the monstrous being. In that instant, Ungoliant attacked, wrapping Morgoth in her unbreakable webs, and for a moment, the mighty Dark Lord was helpless. The transition from conqueror to victim was swift. Just as Ungoliant was about to devour him, Morgoth's cry pierced the silence. His scream echoed across the desolate lands, awakening his loyal servants, the Balrogs, who surged from the depths of Angband. Even Morgoth has his limits, some whispered, as his own greed had nearly spelled his doom. Morgoth, now safe from Ungoliant's wrath, claimed this flame for himself. He returned to Angband, crafting a great iron crown in which he set the Silmarils, crowning himself as the Dark Lord of Middle-earth. Each jewel burned with a light that defied his darkness, yet Morgoth wore them as a mark of his dominion over all he surveyed. Now he turned his gaze toward Beleriand, where the elves had made their homes. The Noldor, led by Feanor and his kin, would not find peace, for Morgoth harbored a hatred for them that was as enduring as his lust for the Silmarils. His ambitions stretched far beyond jewels. He sought to break the will of every being in Middle-earth. The peace of Beleriand shattered when Morgoth unleashed his orc legions upon the elves. His aim was simple yet ruthless: divide and conquer. His orcs moved to isolate the Sindar of Doriath, ruled by King Thingol, from the elves of the coast, led by Círdan. But Morgoth underestimated the resilience of his foes. Denethor, leader of the Green Elves, came to Thingol's aid, and together they turned the tide against Morgoth's forces. When Morgoth's forces retreated, they faced another unexpected blow. A host of dwarves from the Blue Mountains ambushed the orcs, decimating their ranks before they could return to Angband. Yet this setback only fueled Morgoth's hatred, and he prepared for his next assault, one that would be far more devastating. But the elves were not still either, and while Morgoth was preparing his forces, Feanor, determined to reclaim the Silmarils, led his followers in a fierce assault against Morgoth's forces in the battle that would come to be known as the Dagor Nuin Gileath, the Battle Under Stars. Morgoth retaliated with unmatched ferocity, unleashing the Balrogs, who devastated the battlefield. In the midst of this chaos, Feanor fought valiantly, but was mortally wounded by Gothmog, lord of the Balrogs. As Feanor lay dying, he cursed Morgoth with his final breath, vowing that his malice would never go unpunished. This curse, whispered with his last strength, would become a haunting echo in Morgoth's own mind, a reminder that despite his victories, the darkness he spread would never silence the fire of those who opposed him. And it didn't take long for more to oppose him. The sons of Feanor, alongside Fingolfin and Medros, took up their father's cause, laying siege to Angband in a campaign that would last centuries. Morgoth, though pinned within his fortress, remained a dark presence. His patience was as vast as his cruelty. Within the deep shadows of Angband, he rebuilt his strength, gathering allies and crafting plans that would eventually break his foes. During this period of relative calm, a grim knowledge spread among the elves. Morgoth was not a mere tyrant, but a force that corrupted everything he touched. The firstborn, those who had seen the light of Valinor, whispered of friends and kin who had vanished, twisted into servants of the dark. Morgoth's power lay not only in domination, but in desecration, bending even the will of the proud to his purpose. In the darkened halls of Angband, Morgoth worked his foul sorcery on the captured elves, bending their forms into shadows of what they once were. Orcs, wretched creatures of twisted flesh and tortured spirit, were born from his cruelty. This was Morgoth's ultimate weapon, not conquest, but corruption, a desecration of creation itself. The elves and dwarves who resisted knew they fought not just to protect their homes, but to prevent Morgoth's vile influence from remaking Middle-earth in his own image. In every corner of the world, his darkness spread, an ever-present threat to all free beings. Yet, even as Morgoth's reign deepened its grip, hope remained. This hope was embodied by Eärendil, a mariner who bore one of the Silmarils in his journey to seek the aid of the Valar. Eärendil's voyage was perilous, as the enchanted seas around Aman were impassable to all save those with divine purpose. With the light of the Silmaril to guide him, he reached the shores of Aman, the Blessed Realm. In his plea to the Valar, Eärendil spoke not of vengeance, but of salvation for Middle-earth. His journey was not just a personal quest, but a mission to end Morgoth's shadow once and for all. His words, filled with humility and desperation, reached the ears of the Valar, who had watched the suffering of Middle-earth from afar. They could no longer stand aside. The Valar, in their might, finally chose to intervene, rallying their forces for a war that would shake the foundations of the world. For centuries, the Valar had observed Morgoth's growing dominion in silence, unwilling to intervene in Middle-earth's plight. But with Eärendil's plea, they resolved to take action. They called upon the host of the Valar, a mighty force of Maiar, Vanyar, and High Elves from Aman. As their banners unfurled, a glimmer of hope flickered for Middle-earth. Believing himself invincible, Morgoth basked in the triumph of his fortified Angband, the stronghold of his dominion. With Angband fortified, Morgoth felt secure in his rule. His empire stretched across Beleriand, casting a dark shadow over its lands. But his confidence blinded him to the threat assembling in the west as the Valar's host prepared to strike. The ground trembled and skies darkened as the Valar's forces landed, and the battle for Middle-earth began. The host of the Valar swept into Beleriand, igniting the War of Wrath, a conflict beyond any Middle-earth had seen. Dragons, Balrogs, orcs, and men loyal to Morgoth surged forth. From the depths of Angband, Morgoth unleashed his darkest creations. In the skies, Eärendil aboard Vingalot confronted Ankalagan the Black, the most powerful dragon. Their clash shook the heavens, and when Eärendil triumphed, Ankalagan's fall destroyed the peaks of Thangorodrim, sending shockwaves through Morgoth's realm. Morgoth's minions wavered as the host of the Valar shattered his defenses, unraveling his iron grip on Beleriand. With Ankalagan defeated, Morgoth's forces crumbled. Orcs fled in terror, Balrogs were struck down, and fortress walls lay in ruin. Angband, once impenetrable, lay exposed. Morgoth, desperate, attempted to rally his armies, but the resolve of his followers had been shattered. In the end, the hosts of Valinor came against him in a final battle, and all the forces of Angband were scattered. At last, Morgoth himself was cornered within the ruins of Angband. He attempted to plead with the Valar, but his words fell on deaf ears. His former might and grandeur now diminished. Morgoth had become a shadow of his former self. In a final act of defiance, he tried to wield words as weapons, but his pleas only underscored his defeat. Bound by the chain Angenor, Morgoth was shackled, his feet hewn from him as a final humiliation. The Silmarils were wrenched from his crown, and with the host of the Valar as witnesses, he was cast beyond the door of night into the timeless void, banished from Arda. Though Morgoth's era ended, his dark legacy remained a scar on Middle-earth. His loyal servant Sauron would take up his master's mantle, spreading darkness anew. The Silmarils, now lost, remained symbols of Morgoth's lust and corruption. His story is a grim reminder, a caution against unchecked ambition, envy, and isolation. And while Morgoth lay in the void, his shadow persisted. Middle-earth carried the weight of his malice, never fully at peace, forever vigilant against the darkness he had left behind. And that was the tale of Morgoth, the first Dark Lord whose shadow stretched across ages. From his rebellion against the Valar to his banishment beyond the world, Morgoth's story is one of ambition, corruption, and the relentless pursuit of dominion. But what do you think about Morgoth's legacy? Was he a tragic figure driven by envy, or a symbol of irredeemable darkness? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. And if you enjoyed this exploration of Middle-earth's most enigmatic villains, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell to join us on more journeys through Tolkien's world. Thanks for watching.